out, which you've got there, which includes an arborist report and also the consultation feedback, which is done under our tree and vegetation policy, which was adopted a number of years ago. The tree and vegetation policy requires that public consultations is carried out for any tree removal. I would guess I would sort of temper that by saying any significant tree removal, and this is quite significant. So what I've tried to do here in this item is to give you a flavour for some of the issues and also the historical background to some of this. They were planted in 1930, something like that, so they're quite a few years old. The arborist's report, which is an independent report, states that there's quite a lot of work to be done to them. Trees have a life, you know, at some point they come to an end of it. You've also got to look at the risk of those trees and the height in terms of liability if they should fall over onto an adjoining property. So all those need to be considered when thinking of this item. There are the detailed consultation. I've tried to summarise, and I suppose what we're seeing is a weighting in favour of their removal. If the removal was the favoured option, my suggestion would be replacement in something more appropriate to ensure that there is some shade down there, because it does get a lot of use down there, particularly with the kids swimming and families. So some shade would be good to offer down there. You'll see a map which shows you the location and also shows you the adjoining properties. The area we're talking about is ringed and it's council reserve. There are one or two which is number 23 on the map, which is privately owned land. So there's sort of, I guess, just hangover property boundaries there, but primarily it's about those big poplars. Really, if there's any questions.
We're only discussing these populars with the red football around them on page 9/3. And are we talking about all those trees in that red football on page 9/3? Okay, open it up, councillors. Any questions, suggestions? Councillor Downer, was that a hand up?
Yep. Well, trees are always a difficult thing for councils, especially in Taupo. I looked at the submissions and about 50-50, I think, were for and against them being removed. I suppose it really comes down to, for me, it's are they at the end of their tether? And if they are, do they need to come down? If they're not, are we going to set a precedent for the rest of the district on people that wanting trees to come down, that we have to take them down, or we come into litigation of taking them down. And I know in past experience with Hilltop School, we had a property that wanted trees taken down, and we said if it was at their expense, after going through the consultation process with the school, that they could take them down, and they did that. They took them down at their own expense. So
we do have a policy, council policy, that arborist reports have to accompany these sort of applications. This arborist report certainly casts doubt on the integrity of the trees. I mean, I remember going to the dentist 3 months ago and told me there was nothing wrong with me, but a week later we had to take one out. So it goes to show nobody's an expert. But that's certainly an option. Anything further, Councillor Williams?
Yes. Question for Mr. Ridd. I guess one has to question too, what is an appropriate species of tree for an urban landscape? Now, is it appropriate to have huge Lombardy poplars mixed up with residential homes? And the second point is the safety issue. If there's a safety issue, then or a threat to property, then it's really not appropriate that those trees should be there, I would suggest.
That's a question. I think it was probably.
What's appropriate on that landscape?
The size of the tree. Is that
the type of tree?
When these were obviously planted, I mean, there was nothing there. It was whatever it was, But now, things grow, and so possibly not. But I would say in terms of their life, there's quite an expense, and if you look at the arborist report, there's lots of expense required to strap them up and do all sorts to maintain them. So I guess that needs to be brought into the mix as well.
So that, they are a threat to properties as they stand now. That's how you see it?
There's a potential risk there.
On the last storm, we had half the forest blew over between here and Rotorua, but we didn't chop them down prior to that.
Yeah, but we're talking about an urban situation.
I realise that, but you've got policies on trees, and you just have to be very, very careful, because you've got 50% of the people here not wanting them down, and 50% of them do want them down. So, is there a... Councillor Kipper?
I was just going to say, trees cause Turangi a lot of problems as well, but whatever council decides today, that is to remove or to fix them up or whatever, I don't think it will be setting any precedent, because it will simply be at every occasion when this arises, people make or come to council under the tree and vegetation policy, for which we will administer the concern. In this case, the trees, if they are nearing their useful life, and from a purely economic point of view and not an aesthetic point of view, it would be cheaper to chop them down and replace them.
We had some costings on that, have we?
I'm just reading in between the lines here, up $10,000 to fix the trees up, $5,000 to knock them over and replace them.
Just consider, John, the remedial work probably puts the situation where they're still at risk anyway. So more or less taking that out of the equation. So it's whether they're going to come down or be left to come down naturally, or shared costs, as Mike really sort of put to it. Remedial work's a risk anyway.
I'm in agreement with a pragmatic approach. I mean, they are reached pretty close to the use by date, and there is potential risk, and we can replant.
Well, just, one of the submitters too was the local hapu, which represents quite a big proportion of Nukahau, and, their submitters did say it was, used for shading, and it is by a lot of the kids over there. So if they are brought down, then I'd like to see something that remedies that pretty well quick. I'm not sure, I'm not a green finger, if we can have something, at a fairly good size to put in there, that it's not going to take too long to provide that shading for the kids.
They actually use that part there?
Yeah, heaps. Yeah.
I know they use in the little groin there.
Mr. Chairman, the hapu, that was one of the issues. We've had conversations with them. That was certainly one of the issues, and we spoke through with them that should council be of a mind to remove them, what we do there. And they talked about obviously replacement, but they also talked about some temporary, I say temporary in inverted commas, structures there until the replacement trees grow. So shade cloths and stuff like that. There's cheap options that we could look at in terms of that.
Your hands, team.